Take a slow, steady breath in, and then gently breathe out, allowing this moment to grow quieter around you. Because there is nothing you need to rush toward and nothing you need to push away. And faith often begins in moments like this, when the pace of the world softens and awareness turns inward. And the image of the eagle has long been a symbol not of force, but of understanding, because the eagle does not rise by fighting the wind. It rises by trusting it, and this simple truth carries a deeper lesson for moments in life when fear feels present. Not as danger, but as uncertainty. And uncertainty often feels heavier when we are tired, and when the mind searches for answers that are not yet ready to appear. Yet faith gently reminds us that clarity does not always arrive before calm. Sometimes calm arrives first, creating space for clarity to follow. And the eagle understands this rhythm instinctively, waiting without anxiety, sensing without strain, aware of timing without pressure. And waiting in this way is not passive. It is attentive, and attention allows strength to gather quietly beneath the surface. And many people think strength looks like effort. Yet the eagle shows us that true strength often looks like stillness before motion. And stillness before motion is not hesitation. It is wisdom, and wisdom allows the right moment to reveal itself naturally. And as you breathe slowly, you may notice that fear often tightens the body before it shapes the thoughts. Shoulders lifting, breath shortening, muscles preparing for resistance. Yet reassurance works in the opposite direction, softening first, releasing tension gently, and allowing the body to recognize safety before the mind understands it. And faith speaks directly to this deeper layer, reminding us that we are not meant to carry uncertainty alone. And when life presents strong winds in the form of pressure, expectation, or unanswered questions, the natural response may be to resist, to push harder, or to retreat inward. Yet the eagle teaches us another way of alignment, where resistance gives way to trust, and trust allows support to do the lifting. And support does not always announce itself. It often works quietly, steadily, beneath awareness. And the eagle does not ask whether the wind will hold it. It senses, aligns, and rises, and this alignment is not reckless. It is responsive, and responsiveness requires patience. And patience grows when urgency loosens its grip. And urgency often comes from the belief that everything must be resolved immediately. Yet faith invites us to consider that not every moment requires resolution. Some require rest, and rest does not mean avoidance. It means renewal, and renewal prepares the heart for what comes next. And as this reflection continues, you may feel invited to release the belief that fear must be eliminated before progress is possible. Because the eagle does not wait for calm skies to rise, it rises through moving air. And in the same way, faith does not require the absence of fear. It provides a way to move with steadiness through it, and steadiness changes the experience of difficulty. Because what once felt overwhelming begins to feel navigable, and navigation requires perspective, and perspective increases with altitude. And as the eagle gains height, the landscape below becomes clearer. And obstacles that once appeared large begin to shrink, not because they disappear, but because the view has changed. And faith offers this same gift, lifting perspective without removing reality. And lifting perspective does not deny difficulty, it reframes it, allowing the heart to remain calm even when circumstances remain uncertain. And as your breathing remains slow and steady, you may notice how calm begins to feel less like something you are trying to hold onto and more like something that is holding you. And this shift matters, because effort exhausts, while support sustains, and the eagle understands this balance instinctively, gliding when possible, conserving energy, trusting direction. And this teaches us that progress does not require constant effort. Sometimes it requires allowing what is already present to work on our behalf. and allowing requires trust, and trust grows through repetition, not force, and each time you return to stillness, trust deepens quietly, and fear loses urgency without confrontation. And as this understanding settles, you may feel encouraged to stop measuring progress by speed and begin measuring it by steadiness. Because steadiness lasts longer than intensity, and intensity fades quickly, while calm endures, and endurance carries us through long seasons. And just as the eagle eventually rests after long flight, you are allowed to rest too, because rest renews strength, and renewed strength does not rush forward. It moves wisely, and as this first part comes to a gentle pause, you may remain with the image of the eagle poised on open air, wings extended, balanced, supported, unafraid, trusting the unseen currents beneath it, and in the same quiet way, you are invited to trust that you are supported even now, rising above fear not through struggle, but through patience, perspective, and quiet faith. As you continue to breathe slowly and steadily, you may notice that the image of the eagle begins to take on a deeper meaning. Because storms are not something the eagle avoids or challenges, they are something it understands. And understanding changes how difficulty is experienced. Because when a storm approaches, the eagle does not flee in panic, nor does it fight against the wind. Instead, it adjusts its wings and rises into the current, allowing what feels chaotic below to become a source of lift above. And this teaches us something important about the way faith relates to difficulty. Because faith is not the absence of storms, it is the ability to move through them without losing balance. And balance comes from trust rather than control. And control often feels like safety, yet it creates tension, while trust feels like release. And release allows movement. And as the eagle rises higher, the storm remains below, still active, still present, yet no longer overwhelming, because perspective has changed. And perspective does not deny reality, it simply places it in context. And faith offers this same gift, allowing you to acknowledge difficulty without being consumed by it. And as you listen, you may notice that fear often grows when we feel trapped inside circumstances, yet calm grows when we feel lifted above them. And this lifting does not always happen suddenly. It often happens gradually, as resistance softens and acceptance grows. And acceptance does not mean approval of difficulty. It means recognizing that fighting what is already present only drains energy, while aligning with what is present allows strength to be conserved. And the eagle conserves energy by gliding, trusting the wind to do what wings alone cannot. And this teaches us that not every moment requires effort. Some require alignment, and alignment begins with awareness. And awareness begins with stillness. And as your breathing remains slow, you may feel invited to notice where resistance still lives in the body, perhaps as tightness, restlessness, or shallow breath. And without trying to change it, you can simply allow awareness to rest there, because awareness itself begins to soften resistance naturally. And faith works in the same quiet way, not by forcing change, but by allowing understanding to grow. And understanding reduces fear without confrontation. And when the eagle enters turbulent air, it does not tense its wings. It relaxes into the movement, allowing flexibility to replace rigidity. And flexibility is what prevents breaking. And faith teaches us that rigidity often comes from fear, while flexibility comes from trust. And trust allows us to adapt without losing direction. And direction is not lost simply because conditions change. And as the eagle rises, the noise of the storm fades, not because the storm disappears, but because distance changes perception. And this reminds us that peace does not require silence in the world. It requires space within, and space within is created when we stop trying to control everything and allow ourselves to be carried. And being carried does not mean being passive. It means being supported, and support is often present even when it is unseen. And faith reminds us that unseen does not mean unreal, just as the wind is unseen yet powerful. And the eagle trusts something it cannot see, yet depends on completely, and this trust has been built over time, through experience, through repetition, through patience, and patience allows wisdom to develop. And wisdom knows when to act and when to wait. And as this reflection deepens, you may notice that storms in life often reveal where trust is still learning to grow, not as a failure, but as an invitation. And invitations are gentle, not demanding, and faith invites us to grow without shame, to learn without pressure, and to rise without forcing. And just as the eagle does not measure its success by avoiding storms, but by navigating them, you are not asked to avoid difficulty to be strong. You are invited to move through it with steadiness. And steadiness does not come from certainty. It comes from grounding, and grounding happens when we remember that we are not alone within the storm. And faith offers companionship rather than answers, presence rather than explanations, and presence changes everything, because fear thrives in isolation, while calm grows in connection, and connection does not require constant reassurance, it simply requires awareness, and awareness brings the realization that you are supported even when circumstances remain unsettled, and as your breathing continues, you may feel encouraged to release the belief that storms mean failure or delay, because storms often accelerate growth, not by force, but by necessity, teaching balance, teaching awareness, teaching patience, and patience is what allows calm to remain steady over time. And as the eagle rises above the storm, the sky begins to open, light becomes clearer, and movement becomes smoother. And this moment does not arrive suddenly, it arrives gradually, as alignment replaces resistance, and alignment feels lighter than effort, and lighter does not mean weak, it means efficient, and faith works in this efficient way, conserving energy while providing direction. And as this part comes to a gentle pause, you may remain with the image of the eagle gliding above the storm clouds, steady, flexible, unafraid, trusting the unseen forces that carry it forward, and in the same quiet way, you are invited to trust that even when life feels turbulent, you are being lifted above it, not through struggle, but through alignment, patience, and quiet faith. The image of the eagle continues to rest quietly in your awareness. You may begin to notice how height changes everything. Because what once felt confusing or overwhelming often becomes clearer when seen from a wider view. The eagle does not rise simply to escape what is below. It rises to understand it, and understanding brings calm. Because clarity reduces fear without effort. And fear often comes not from danger itself, but from the inability to see beyond the immediate moment. Faith gently teaches that perspective is one of the greatest gifts we are given, because perspective allows the heart to remain steady even when circumstances remain unresolved. As the eagle glides higher, details below begin to soften, not because they disappear, but because they are placed in context. Context changes meaning, and meaning shapes experience. This is why faith often invites us to lift our view rather than fix every detail. Because when the view expands, tension naturally loosens, and as you continue breathing slowly, you may notice how the body responds to this idea, relaxing as the mind stops narrowing its focus. Because the body understands relief when pressure eases, and relief does not require answers. Requires space, and space is created when perspective widens. And the eagle understands this instinctively, using height not as distance from reality, but as clarity within it, and faith works in the same way, not pulling us away from life, but helping us see life more clearly. And seeing clearly allows wisdom to replace urgency, because urgency thrives on narrow focus. while wisdom grows in spaciousness. And as the eagle circles calmly, conserving energy, observing quietly, reminds us that not every moment requires action. Some require observation, and observation allows insight to surface naturally. And insight is often quieter than instruction, because it arises from understanding rather than effort. And faith-based reassurance often arrives this way, not as a command, but as a realization. And realizations change how we feel without demanding change. And as you listen, you may find that certain thoughts begin to feel less heavy, not because they are resolved, but because they are no longer carried alone. And faith reminds us that perspective does not remove responsibility. It removes isolation, and isolation is often what makes challenges feel overwhelming. And when the eagle surveys the land from above, it is not judging what it sees, it is understanding where it is. And understanding brings orientation, and orientation brings calm. Because when we know where we are less likely to panic about where we are going. And faith invites us to trust that orientation can exist even without a map, because presence provides direction one moment at a time. And as your breathing remains steady, you may notice how reassurance deepens when you stop demanding certainty and allow clarity to emerge gradually. And gradual clarity is often more stable than sudden answers, because it integrates naturally. And the eagle does not rush to descend once it reaches height. It remains aloft, allowing perspective to settle. And this teaches us that clarity is not always immediate. It often unfolds as we remain open and patient. And patience creates room for understanding, and understanding softens fear without confrontation. And as the eagle continues to glide, the light changes, shadows shift, details become visible in new ways. And this reminds us that circumstances can look different depending on where we stand. And faith encourages us to choose a higher vantage point, not through effort, but through trust. And trust allows us to remain steady even when the path ahead is not fully visible. And this steadiness becomes a quiet form of strength, one that does not rely on control or certainty, but on presence and awareness. And as this part of the reflection continues, you may feel invited to release the belief that clarity must arrive before peace is possible, because peace often arrives first, creating the conditions where clarity can grow. Peace does not require resolution. It requires acceptance of where you are. And acceptance does not mean approval. It means understanding, and understanding reduces resistance. And resistance is often what keeps fear alive. And when resistance softens, fear loses urgency, and as the eagle maintains its altitude, it expends less energy, gliding rather than flapping. And this teaches us that wisdom often conserves strength, allowing us to move forward without exhaustion. And faith-based encouragement invites us into this same rhythm, one where effort is balanced with rest, and movement is balanced with stillness. And as your breathing remains calm, you may notice how your thoughts feel less crowded, because space has been created. In this space, reassurance can settle more deeply. And reassurance does not shout. It rests quietly, and as this section comes to a gentle pause, you may remain with the image of the eagle high above the landscape, seeing clearly, moving calmly, unhurried, supported by unseen currents. And in the same quiet way, you are invited to trust that clarity will come, not through force or urgency, but through patience, perspective, and steady faith. As the image of the eagle, you may begin to notice a natural slowing, because after long flight comes rest. And rest is not an ending, it is part of the rhythm that sustains strength over time. And the eagle does not remain in constant motion. It understands when to glide, when to rise, and when to settle. And this understanding is not learned through urgency, but through patience, and patience allows calm to deepen without effort. And faith often invites us into this same rhythm, reminding us that movement and stillness are not opposites. They work together, and as your breathing continues gently, you may feel invited to release the need to stay alert, to stay vigilant, or to stay ahead of what comes next. Because this moment does not require readiness, it only requires presence, and presence does not demand action. It simply remains, steady and supportive. And just as the eagle finds a place to rest after soaring, you are allowed to rest now, without explanation, without effort, without concern that something important will be missed. And rest in this sense is not disengagement. It is trust, and trust allows the body to soften and the mind to loosen its grip on control. And when control loosens, peace finds space to settle more deeply. And peace does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly, often noticed only after tension fades. And faith-based reassurance works this way, gently replacing strain with ease. And as the eagle folds its wings and settles into stillness, it remains aware, not anxious, present without effort, and this teaches us that stillness can be strong. And strength does not disappear when motion stops. It renews itself, and renewal is what allows endurance over long seasons. And endurance is built through balance, not pressure, and as you listen, you may notice that your thoughts have slowed naturally, not because they were forced to stop, but because reassurance has replaced urgency. And reassurance does not require repetition to be true. It simply remains, and remaining is enough. And the night itself seems to understand this rhythm, offering quiet, reduced demands, and softer edges, and faith often meets us most clearly in these quieter hours, when distractions fade and awareness deepens. And the gentle image of the eagle resting reminds us that we are not meant to be constantly rising. Sometimes we are meant to simply be. And being is not wasted time, it is necessary time, and necessary time restores clarity, and clarity restores confidence, and confidence grows quietly, without announcement, and as your breathing remains slow and even, you may feel safe to let go of the need to evaluate your progress. Because progress does not disappear during rest, it integrates, and integration allows wisdom to settle into the body and mind. And wisdom is often felt as calm certainty rather than excitement. And faith encourages us to trust this quiet certainty, because it is stable and enduring. And as the eagle rests, supported by the same currents that lifted it, you are reminded that support does not vanish when activity stops. It remains, steady and reliable, and this support does not depend on your awareness to be effective. It simply exists, and this realization allows deeper rest, because the responsibility to hold everything together is gently released, and released responsibilities create space for peace to expand, and peace expands naturally when it is not constrained by fear. And fear loses its urgency when it is no longer fed by resistance. And as this final section continues, you may feel invited to remain with a sensation of being supported, not by effort, but by presence. And presence does not require explanation, it simply accompanies, and accompaniment is what reassures the heart most deeply. Because isolation is what fear needs to grow, and connection is what calm needs to remain. And faith offers connection not as noise or instruction, but as quiet companionship, and this companionship remains through every breath, every pause, and every moment of stillness. And as the words soften and the spaces between them grow longer, you may allow yourself to rest more fully, knowing that nothing is required of you now, and nothing is expected, and nothing needs to be resolved before sleep arrives. And even if sleep comes slowly or not at all, rest is still happening, because rest begins in the body before it reaches the mind. And the body recognizes safety when tension releases, and safety allows surrender, and surrender allows renewal, and renewal prepares you for whatever comes next. without rushing toward it, and as this reflection gently comes to a close, you may remain with the image of the eagle resting calmly after long flight, steady, supported, unafraid, trusting the same unseen currents that carried it above the storms. And in the same quiet way, you are invited to trust that you are supported now, held in calm, rising when it is time, resting when it is time, and never alone in either. And as the night continues, you may simply remain here, breathing softly, resting deeply, and allowing peace to carry you, knowing that you have risen, you have seen clearly, and now you are safe to rest.